Now let's get to our yoga class today. And it'll be a gentle class. And again, I see I have a few people on, so welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much. Um, Today's class will be about exploring what's called the Vishranti. The Vishranti is where our consciousness pauses. So it's a point of focus. Unlike a drishti, which is a point of focus that can be outside yourself and it's a hard point of focus, a Vishranti is more of just a somatic sensation of focus. So it's a resting point rather than an active point. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on different points through our body and then explore the circumference around those points. Each of our joints in our body have the capacity to move in kind of a three-dimensional space, and that means that it can circle. Some may circle better than others, but again, this is kind of a gentle focus, a somatic focus of a dance around a still point, a point of exploration. All right? We're going to start on our backs, and a couple of pieces of equipment that might be useful for you to have is if you have a strap laying around and you can make it so that it's shoulder width apart, that's awesome. It is optional, not super necessary. So if you don't have one or if it's hard to go find one, just let it go. The other thing is potentially a yoga block. And again, it's not necessary, it's just helpful. These are both going to be things that you can feel so that you know where you're moving and where you're not supposed to be moving, all right? So again, let's go ahead and lay back and get started here. If when you lay back, if you need a little bit of a blanket under your head or shoulders, go ahead and place that. We will be on our hands and knees for a little bit, so again, a blanket might be one other little piece of equipment that is nice to have. All right, so everybody lay back. And as you lay back, just allow your focus to settle wherever is comfortable to you. All right, so sometimes when we lay back, it's nice to have the focus coming into maybe the back of your head, kind of quieting the brain and moving more towards a point of stillness in what they sometimes call the reptilian brain, or just this is just where your body is finding quietness and just the regulation of heart and breath. So quieting back towards the back of the brain to start. All right. I'm drinking lots of water because again, it's like 80 degrees in here. Okay, so settling back. And as you settle back, just this lovely pause. Maybe notice your breath. Notice if your thoughts are circling around you, and can you just let them be, right? They can circle around you. You don't have to grab for clouds, right, or grab for thoughts. You can just let them be. And just let your focus again kind of settle back behind your eyes, between your ears, back of the throat, base of the brain. If you can, go ahead and soften your lips, but keep them gently sealed and just breathe through the nose. And just kind of start to follow the breath as it comes back into that still point. Can you sense it? Can you feel the breath moving around that Vishranti, that soft focus at the back of your brain? And notice if your tongue is really harsh in your mouth, see if you can relax it. And then just continue this exploration from this still point, just moving through your body. Maybe you take the next still point to the base of your heart. Another nice place to focus and to pause and just notice. Maybe you can feel your heart beating as you become more quiet. Maybe you can feel the movement of your diaphragm as you breathe gently. And then maybe you follow the breath as it moves into the base of the belly and towards the root of your body. So just where does your focus settle inside of you? And just notice that sense of settling. And we'll take a few more breaths before we start to move. All right, so as we're laying here, relaxing, settling, kind of noticing that place of just kind of settling your consciousness. We're gonna start with our feet, our knees, our hips, and I'll start with very conservative movements, and you feel free to make them as big or as small as feels right for you. And again, many of these movements could be done sitting in a chair. Might be a little challenging for some of them, but you can just adapt as you need to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to bring one leg into the air. And our first still point is going to be the center of our ankle. So if you can just begin to kind of shift your awareness to the center of your ankle. And what we're going to be doing is circling our foot. So the toe, the big toe, is drawing the circumference around the still point of the ankle. Now try not to move your whole leg here. And in fact, if you need to hold your leg still, and it may be helpful, I'm just going to turn sideways here a little bit. It may be helpful to really look at your foot and notice if it's choppy. As you circle, can you make the circle smooth? We'll change directions, and maybe you notice as you're circling your big toe, the still point in your ankle, if you're holding onto your shin, you might notice that there's a spiraling that comes through that still point, flowing into the next space. And of course, this funneling of energy is how liquids move in the physical world, right? So when water moves through a narrowing space, it funnels in, and then there are eddies, there are pools of movement that come out through that still point. All right, and then relax your foot, and now we're going to move the still point into the center of our knees. And let's just start by just bending and straightening the knee. And a lot of times we think of the knee as being a hinge joint, but there's a lot of play in our knee. And again, there'll be this energy that funnels up to our thigh, but we're going to try not to move our thigh in space. What we're going to do is now bend your knee just slightly and rotate your thigh so you can kind of point your foot in and point your foot out. Now if we add that with that hinging, now we're starting to draw a circle with our whole foot. The still point is in the middle of the knee, and you might feel some of the rotation, some of that funneling through coming into your thigh, but the thigh is staying still in space. It's just turning slightly. There's some torque that comes through it. This routine we're doing today is one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and change directions. If you've come to my lunchtime or evening gentle classes, it's one we return to quite often because it's just a lovely practice. Just stirring up the prana and moving it through. All right. And then we're going to relax our lower leg. Now we're going to move the still point into the center of our hips. And we're going to start with smaller movements here. You can make these movements as big as you want to, right? What we're going to do is we're going to straighten the knee, point the toe, and you might look at the ceiling here if you're laying on the floor, and now your whole leg is going to begin to draw a circle as if your big toe is drawing that circle on the ceiling. And you can start with very small movements. Maybe you choose to make the movements bigger, kind of drawing the circle around the room. Your other knee can drop out of the way. Try to, as much as possible though, not move your whole body. So no rolling side to side as you're drawing these circles, but you will feel the movement coming through that still point of the hip, funneling into your low back and belly, especially if you make the movements bigger. We're going to change directions. And again, noticing, like, this is my left hip. I have a little bit of a point where there's some impingement in that left hip, and I notice it's a little choppy in that space. So, you know, you can make your movement smaller if you notice that choppiness, especially if there's impingement. Right? It shouldn't hurt. Shouldn't hurt. So it's not about making it big and strong and overpowering yourself. It's about feeling the movement through and making it as smooth of a transition as possible. We don't want to have that kind of disruptive flow of energy. We want it to coming through. Little eddies are fine. Let's not make it be, you know, super rough. All right, and then we'll soften the knee and lay that leg down. And just pausing there, notice how that feels for you. Taking a few breaths. Comparing the leg you just moved to the leg you haven't. And then we'll switch sides. So we're going to bring the second favorite leg up into the air. Again, we start with the still point being in the middle of the ankle. Maybe you hold on to your leg. And this can be one place where you use your strap if you need to. And we start to circle the big toe. Moving as big of a circle as you can, as smooth of a circle as you can. Again, I'm just kind of turning my leg so you can see maybe a little bit better the circling of my toe. Arching the foot, flexing the ankle. Using the energy of your foot, siphoning it through the still point of your ankle. And maybe feeling some of the little eddies of energy coming through your shin. And we'll change directions. Nice. And then soften your foot. Knee joint is next. And again, let's just start with some bending and straightening so you get that idea. And then a slight bend. And if you want to, I like to flex my foot here because it just makes me realize that what I'm moving is my lower leg. The still point is in my knee. There's some rotation in my thigh, but my thigh doesn't move around in space. It doesn't shift. And I start that circling. Whole foot and lower leg. Still point in the knee. A little bit of movement through the thigh without the thigh moving itself. And again, making these circles as big as feels comfortable for you, keeping the movements slow and smooth rather than fast or jerky. And changing directions. Nice. Now, our still point is in our hip. And again, it's a soft focus. It's a somatic focus. How does it feel to have this energy flowing through that point of focus? So we maybe point our big toe. We're looking at the ceiling, and we're starting to draw small circles on the ceiling. The torso stays still. There's movement through, but not movement of your torso. Maybe those movements of your hip get bigger. How does that feel? Can you keep it controlled and smooth? Again, the other knee can drop out of the way if your circles get as big as the whole room. I gotta watch I don't kick over the candle there. All right, and changing directions. Again, if your leg gets tired, just make the circle smaller again. Be more on the conservative side rather than the aggressive side here. And we'll take a couple more. And then when you're ready, relax the knee, bring the foot back to the floor, pause. Our next point is in the lower belly. It's kind of where the hips, would meet one another, the still point there. And it's going to be lower than the belly button. And what we're going to do is we're going to slowly bring both knees up to our chest. And you can hold your knees here with your hands. And we're just going to start with just little rocks side to side. So you can maybe feel that twisting that's coming through the torque, again, coming through the upper torso. But the movement is going to be originating from the knees. And now I'm starting to circle my knees. Still point in the lower belly. Now again, you can stay super conservative here. Maybe your hands are even still on your knees. Maybe you want to straighten your legs. Add a little bit more energy potential with those longer leg levers coming through. And again, we're trying not to let the back really move too much. There's the still point is in that lower back. And changing directions, whether your knees are bent or straight, it doesn't matter. You're just noticing how it feels. Bending my knees again. And one or two more. Whenever you're ready, rest back. Pause. We're going to shift from laying on our backs to a seated posture. I'm going to be working from our hands to our shoulders next. So feel free to do any other movements you'd like to on your back, to take your time shifting from your back to your side, and then coming to a seat. Maybe I'll move a little closer here. And as you come to your seat, feel free to sit in a chair for this next part if sitting on the floor is uncomfortable, or maybe you sit on the block or your blanket, and your legs can be arranged whatever way feels good. All right, see some comments. Again, when we're doing a live stream class, I will absolutely come back to your comments when I'm done with the course. But thank you so much for the comments. I think I saw a couple of hearts coming up too. I love those. Lets me know that you're there, and that's all awesome. All right, so hopefully you come up to a comfortable seat, and we're going to start with moving our wrists, and we'll do both wrists at the same time. What I'll have you do is take your thumbs and place them inside your fingers, and then turn your palms up and pull your elbows into your side. Try to keep the palms facing you as we circle our knuckles. So the still point is in your wrist, and again, try not to move your forearms. Keep them still. And I'm just going to turn sideways here so you can see. Movement is around the still point in my wrist. The forearm feels that flow through for sure, but it's not moving itself. Still as you can make the forearm. And we'll change directions. And all of these wrist and forearm movements are so important. I've spent the last couple of days really working in the yard, pulling and digging, and I can really feel it in my forearms. So go slow and see if you can move through those narrow spaces, and just think about that. This movement is nourishing all of those little muscles that worked really hard to dig, to pull. Maybe you're painting, doing anything like that. All right. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to open our hands, and we're going to bring our fingers, elbows next. Open your hands, and again, we'll just start with some hinge joints here. So the elbow is kind of like the knee. We think of it as a hinge joint, right? But notice I can also move it out and in. Now, will there be some rotation in my upper arm? Yeah, you can maybe see my finger on my bicep, it's moving a bit. I'm gonna just move my legs here, and what we're gonna do is we're going to now circle through the still point in the elbows. My upper arms are tied into my sides, so those upper arms are maybe rotating a little bit, but they're not moving in space. And I'm circling my hands, moving through my elbow. And work where it's a little bit harder. So usually it's harder when the elbows start to turn the thumbs back and up. Like working through here is easy. We can even cross over here. So don't worry too much about the front. Work on the back part. And we'll reverse the circles. Notice how my palms are staying pretty much face up as I'm doing this. All right, maybe one more circle here. And then we're going to bring our hands to our shoulders, and now the upper arms are going to make the circle. So the elbows draw the circle. And just like that last movement, it's going to be the part where you're moving back and up is going to be more difficult than the forward and downward. So go slow. Again, try to smooth out the circles. Make the circumference as large as you can. Still points deep in your shoulder joint. And right now we're letting the shoulder blades fly. We're going to move those separately here in a moment. Chest is staying still. Again, you'll probably feel some movement coming through the shoulder into your upper back and chest. So observe that, let it happen. We'll change directions. I think I can feel the air starting to cool this room a little bit more. All right, good. So now, I think maybe, try to figure out where to put my hair. We're gonna work on the shoulder blades themselves. Now, just imagine my hands here are the shoulder blades, and you can move your shoulder blades up and down, so try that a few times. Just bring your shoulder blades up and down. Notice your arms move, but try not to flap your elbows. So shoulder blades up and down. Okay. And then the shoulder blades they can move out and in, right? So, and they kind of round your ribs. So out and in. Okay, and again, you can notice that my upper arms are moving, my forearms are moving, but they're not moving around in space. They're moving with my shoulder blades. So again, we can smooth this out. We can move them up and down, out and in, so we can make shoulder blade circles on our upper back. So chest is still, head is still, arms are going to kind of stay in their position. They'll move with the shoulder blades. I like to start by squeezing the shoulder blades together and kind of zipping up like a zipper goes up a zipper. Take them up like you're zipping up your upper back, out and then down. So they're coming up the center, and as you're coming down, they're going around the outer edges of your ribs. And again, try to just keep your spine as still as possible, your chest as still as possible. Circle your shoulder blades. And then let's change direction. So now I'm going to unzip. I'm going down the spine and up around the edges. This is a great way to get kinks out of your upper back. Go slow, smooth it out, and spread the energy. Notice what that feels like. So the still point we're circling around is really the center point of both of your shoulder blades, where they would rest on your upper back. All right, and then let that go. Okay, so we've moved our legs to our lower belly. We moved our arms into our upper back. Now we're going to go into the waistline, into the center of our bodies. This is a tricky one, and this is where the strap and the block might be handy for you. We're going to come into all fours, so maybe if you need a blanket under your knees, go ahead and do that. And just as you come into all fours, go ahead and just shift around. Do whatever feels good. So maybe move your whole body. You can wiggle your butt. You can do whatever feels good for a moment or two. Maybe you need to stretch through your hands. If being on your wrists is painful, is uncomfortable, and you don't have at home any way to ramp your hands, you can do this on your forearms as well. It'll be a little bit trickier on your forearms, but it will work. Okay, so I'm just trying to find the best angle here with the camera. Once you've gotten all your wiggles out, what we're going to try to do is move our waistline, and the center point is going to be in the center of your abdomen, but you're going to be moving your abdomen around. So you're going to want to think about the center point being at the center of this movement. And also centering your hips and your shoulders so they're not moving. So this is where the block comes in handy. If you put that between your knees, and if you move your knees around, you'll notice you feel the block shifting. So you're aware if you're wiggling your hind end. If you put the strap around your arms, again, my strap is locked at shoulder width. And if I put that around my arms, it helps me to keep my arms stable. Make it just a little bit more narrow here. So just adjust it so that your arms are shoulder width underneath you if you've got the block and the strap. Right? And so then the movement is a circling of your waistline. So again, let's just start with some of the single dimensional movement. So you're thinking about cat and cow here, rounding the spine into cat, and dropping the spine into cow. And then I'm going to pause in the middle, and I'm going to take a side stretch side to side. And it's moving my ribs out to the center. So maybe notice right now I'm moving my hips, right? You can see that line where my under tank is there. I'm going to keep my hips still, and I'm moving my ribs out to the side and trying not to move the hips. I'm squeezing the blocks and moving it the other way. It's a little bit harder movement to manage side to side, but you want to think about kind of stretching between your hips and shoulders without a great deal of movement side to side in your torso. So we're going to make circles, okay? Again, it's harder than you think to move the center of your body without everything else pitching in. So press into your strap and squeeze into your block, drop your belly into cow, and then begin to pull over to the right, up, down to the left, and back to the center. This takes some abdominal effort. So if you don't feel it, again, you're probably moving everything else rather than your center. So this first circling, I'm going up on the right and down on the left. Doesn't matter which way you're going, just be aware of it. Takes concentration. One or two more in this direction. And And then we'll change direction. So now I'm going up on the left and down on the right. And again, I'm trying to minimize the movement of my hips and shoulders. Maximize the movement at my center. One or two more. It's a lot easier to move the center when everybody else pitches in. I'm trying to keep them as still as possible. And move just around my belly button. Ooh, one more. All right, while we're in this position, feel free to, if you need to, rest back and just come into a child's pose. If after that movement you feel like, wow, the energy in me is starting to really pick up, I want to do a flow, feel free to take a flow. We've warmed up hips, shoulders, and midsection. So you can do whatever movements that feel good. If you want to go into a downward facing dog, come through a plank, maybe lower down chaturanga, up dog, and back to down dog. Modify as you need to. Skip that part if you'd like. You're going to eventually come back to a seat. And this time we will be working through the hips, waistline, shoulders. So how we sit is going to matter this time. So if you have a hard time sitting with your legs straight out in front of you, again, the blanket under your hips can be really, really helpful. I'm going to give everybody another moment or two to settle in. So we're coming into seated staff pose. Legs are straight out in front of you. Spine is erect, long, right? It's kind of stretching through that midsection. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin with just a simple side stretch. So this may kind of give you that sense of the movement that we were doing alongside. So keep your hip rooted down, reach up with your arm. Feel the pull through your forearm, through your upper arm, into your shoulder blade, into your ribs. So now really stretch and move those ribs. Again, I'm just shifting angles here so you can see what's going on. Shifting, really pushing my ribs out. Take several breaths. What's happening is each of the ribs are spiraling now. So we're moving around our heart space. Keep the arm pulled up, keep the ribs pushed over, keep the hip ground down. And then we're going to take the arm slightly forward of our face and continue to stretch. So now you feel maybe more of the back ribs here, what I think of as kind of the back armpit space. And again, breathing. Nice full breaths here. What we're trying to do is get those ribs to spiral themselves. And then we'll come back, arm by your ear. And then we're going to bring the arm behind your back. So, or behind your head, sorry, behind your body. So bring that arm back. You're going to start to feel the stretch through the chest and the front armpit. And this is usually a really tight area. So bringing that arm back. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll arch our back. Try to keep your spine, again, stable. Move the arm, move the breath into this front chest area. And after several breaths of reaching back, now bring your arm back forward. Bring your other arm up and just kind of notice the difference, the relative difference of space between the side we just stretched and the side we haven't yet. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take, so I had this arm up, I'm going to bend that side knee. This hand's going to come into the knee, keep the arm by the ear, reaching up, maximizing the space, and now take a twist. And as you twist, try not to bend forward or arch back. Stay aligned and strong, and try not to overly pull with your hand on your knee. It can get you started, but then soften the knee, and maybe even reach back with your arm that's up and reach forward with your arm on the knee. Few breaths here. And then release it and come back. So again, just taking a moment and just noticing somatically the difference when we really focused on this side body and this side area around the heart and the ribs, how that changed the sense of space you have there. Right, we're going to take it to the second side. So again, seated staff, tall spine, one hand down, the other arm right up alongside your ear. Reach up, root down, and shift over so your ribs are pushed out. This side is now squished and closed, so your breath always goes to the more mobile side, to the easier space that's open. So if we can find a way to open spaces in our body, these narrow spots, these vishrantis, right? If we can find a way to focus on how to flow through, we can increase our overall pranic capacity. So prana is associated with the breath, but it's also all the movement of vitality through your whole system. Now we're going to bring that arm forward, again trying not to change the position of the chest or the head, just pulling into the back armpit space and breathing there. More breaths, directing the breath into where you feel the stretch. So using the breath as movement. And then the arm comes back alongside the ear, and then it comes behind you. And again, try not to arch your back here, because that's taking the movement away from the front ribs, right? We don't want to move our spine. We want to keep our spine still. We want to move our arm. We want to move our breath. We want to move the ribs in this front armpit space. All right. Oh, keep it back there. And then bring it alongside your ear. And again, we'll come back to center. Both arms come up. You know, maybe you can see that it's easier for me to reach up on both sides now. I'm going to bend my knee on the side I just stretched. Opposite hand comes to that knee. Just gives me some stability for a moment. Begin your twist. Notice if you're really cranking on that knee, or if you're changing the position of your torso to twist. Try to twist from the thorax, from those ribs we just stretched. That's really where our spine can maximize its twist, is in the space of the rib joints, where those vertebrae have the capacity to rotate. Lower back, maybe 5 degrees of rotation at most, but most of the rotation comes from the upper back. You can add your arms to give a little bit more energy through, reaching up through those arms, feeling that rotation that your arms can add to the ribs, add to the spine, breathing into the space of the stretch, of the twist. All right, and then releasing, coming back. Taking a moment, letting that soft focus around your heart space be felt. So we're going to combine everything now. The center point is the base of the heart. And although the hips aren't going to be into active movement, they will be into a spiral that stabilizes that base of the heart as the upper body circles around it. So you can think of like the base of the heart is having kind of a kite string to it, and the hips are holding that kite string. What we're going to do is I'd like you to bend your knees, and I will give right-left directions here because we want to make sure we're working with our knees in the appropriate positioning. So crossing your crossing your left foot behind your right. So left foot behind right, right shin is in front, and we're going to come into a cross-legged seat that way. Now, maybe you have more capacity to move in your hips, or maybe you have less. Maybe your knees are not bent all the way. Maybe they're bent all the way. Maybe you need to just use a blanket under your hips to give you a little bit of a boost. What we want, again, is a stable seat. All right, so putting a little blanket under my hips helps my hips stabilize, helps me to feel more comfortable in the cross-legged position. If you have even more capacity to stabilize your hips, what you might do is come into like a half Padmasana or a half lotus pose, where you place your right ankle over your left knee. Now you can notice on me, my hips don't have that degree of rotation easily. My knee is not stable, so I want my knees down. I want them stable. If crossing your legs this way and using a blanket still doesn't get your knees down and stable, then put maybe blocks or something under your knees. Left hand's going to find right knee. Right hand's going to reach up alongside the ear. We're going to take our side bend. We're going to take that right arm forward, little stretch through the back armpit. We're going to sweep around into our twist. Remember, try not to crank with your hand on your knee. We're going to reach that arm behind us. This time allow your back to bend. Come into a bit of a back bend. Side bend, a little bit of a forward bend, sweep to a twist. So your whole right side is creating the circumference of the circle from the base of your heart. And you can take this circle as big as you'd like. Your left hand on your right knee is just reminding you to stay grounded. Maybe one or two more circles in this direction. It just depends on your particular speed. And again, the idea is not to go fast, but to move smoothly and fully. Once you're behind yourself, we're going to reverse this. So sweeping forward, side, back bend, twist. And again, just a lovely, smooth movement. Anchoring your heart with your right hip. Using the arm, the shoulder, the ribs, the upper back to circle the base of your heart. Maybe one more on this side. And when you're ready, pause. A few breaths. That's just a yummy, yummy move, but it helps to have kind of shifted our focus through all of the different places before we take these bigger moves, because otherwise a lot of times we'll move rather than through, we'll kind of move around. It's just the nature of fluid dynamics in our bodies. All right, we're going to cross our legs the other way. So now left shin is in front of right. And again, arranging your feet, knees, and hips wherever you need to be to have those knees grounded. Like you can see, my knees are resting on my feet. So although I don't have a block under my knees are grounded on top of my feet, and my feet are firm to the ground. So I'm rooting down. Now I'm going to take my right hand to that left knee. So that's my stabilizing, my sense of propping myself is coming through that right hand. Left arm comes up alongside the ear. We start with our side bend. Again, it's not a side lean. Keep your hip down. Little forward stretch here through the armpit before the spine. So feel the back of your arm. Sweep around to your twist. Reach behind your head. Allow a little back bend. Side bend. Reach forward, maybe a little forward bend. Start the sweep to be smooth and circular. Explore, again, the back side is going to be the harder side. That's where we're not used to reaching. So ground yourself, stabilize yourself, but move yourself into those harder places. Explore your potential. We'll take maybe one more sweep in this direction. And again, just as you come behind yourself where you're in your twist, reverse your direction so that you're sweeping forward and then up into your side and then back bend. Second direction is a little bit harder because we're actually moving the weight of our body into that back bend. So flow gently. If you have a sticky spot, go slower. How can you support it? So if you have a sticky spot, notice how can you support it through your ribs and waist, through your shoulder and arm, right? And then through your spine. And again, we'll take maybe one or two more circles here. Base of heart to tip of fingers. And when you've kind of completed your circles on this side, come back to your seat. Notice how you feel. All right. We have one more area of our bodies to move, and that's going to be specifically the neck. And we want to try to move from the top of the neck down. And so we're going to start with really small movements. And what I'd like you to do is find a seat that makes you feel like you can sit tall, right? And I like to start by just putting my finger right on the crown of my head, and I push into it so I get an inch or two taller, right? And we have all this lovely awareness of our hips being stable. If you need to shift your seated position, do so. Our shoulders are going to stabilize our heart. Now, rather than move our heart, hold your heart stable. And we're just going to start by just thinking about your nose being what's going to draw the circle. And just start by just taking little nods. And again, try to do it just at the very top of your head, or top of your neck and the base of your head, right? So again, really bring this internal focus. See if you can feel the movement, right? So not just focusing on that still point at the top of your neck, but also it's more of a somatic. Can I feel that spot? Can I feel the tipping of my head relative to my neck? And then maybe take a little bit bigger nods. So now you can feel the movement coming down your neck. And again, this is just kind of the easier movement like we did hinging at our elbow and knee. But try to keep the movement fluid through your neck until maybe you come to where your chin can come all the way to your chest. Go slowly through the bones of your neck, and then maybe you can tip your chin up a bit. Bring just the chin and head down, and then slowly through the bones of your neck. Necks are delicate and they're incredibly fluid, but again, we tend to not move them completely. We tend to over move one part, under move another, and so we get a little bit of arthritis in one part and a little bit of calcification of non-mobility in another part. So we're going to continue to work on our neck. Again, making yourself tall. Now turn your nose to one side, so you're starting to spiral your neck. And same thing, we're going to start with really small, just small nods of just your head. No movement in the neck, and if you need to put your hand there to notice if you're moving your neck yet, put your hands there. And because we're familiar with this, we can go a little bit faster. Now we start to move through head, top of neck, through to the base of the neck. From the base of the neck, through to the top of the neck, and then to the head. Okay, go slow. We're going to do one more time through. So imagine there are 7 little bones in your neck, and imagine you're kind of like sliding them like little blocks as you're moving. And then the head is what tips. Right, come back to the center. Now turn the other way. Again, start with just the nods. Just my head is tipping. My neck is staying still. Noticing that movement. And then I start to move through my neck. So we really have kind of two points of somatic focus here. One is the base of the neck where it connects to your shoulder girdle. And one is the top of the neck where the head pivots. All right, last time of just these slow nods on this side. And then come back to the center. Now we're ready to circle. We're going to start with just the head, and then just like we did with the nods, slowly move into the full circumference of our head. Pay attention to how it feels. Remember that this point of consciousness is not just like a hard focus, it's a somatic focus. How does it feel to move around these still points, right? So again, first of all, I'm making myself tall and I'm holding my neck still. My nose is going to start to draw the circle, but it's only coming from the tipping of my head. So only from the top of my neck. And it's small. And I'm going to just stay in this direction for a bit. Now I'm starting to move slowly into the top of my neck. Sometimes you start to hear little crunchies as you're starting to make these circles bigger. And of course, you just remember that your inner ears are right there, so you hear it a lot more. And also, it's just an indication that we need to move more in this space. There's something that's maybe rubbing up against something else. Go slower, see if you can create space. Now I'm slowly moving into my whole neck. Again, the heart is still, the still point at the base of the neck is what I'm working around now. Hatha yoga is really an exploration. It's not a performance. It's about just remembering, literally putting together again the mind and the body. They've never been separate. But so many times our focus is outside of ourselves. We forget to focus in. All right, so now I'm just going to shift directions and I'm going to stay with the bigger circles. Going slow. Still point at the base of my throat. And then I'm going to slowly start to inch my way up my neck. So I'm going to start to make the circles a little bit smaller. Still points moving a little bit higher up my neck. Can I successfully circle through that space? Move up a little bit higher. Circles get a little smaller. Base of the neck is now still moving into kind of the upper third of your neck. And then I'm going to slowly come into the top of the neck and just where my head is able to pivot. Trying to keep the rest of my neck still. And then find where your head rests in stillness on the top of your neck. So we've come back around to our starting focus. Where your head is resting on your neck is somewhere at the back of the throat, kind of between your ears, behind your eyes, base of your brain. Coming back around to this still point, just notice how it feels. We're going to settle into our meditation. And for our final meditation, I'm going to read to you from T.S. Eliot's poem, Burnt Norton. This is a short segment of a very long poem, but to me it is the perfect segment to read and to meditate on as we've explored this point of consciousness, this Vishranti of our practice today. So if you'd like to stay seated, feel free to stay seated. If you'd like to lay back into any posture, Shavasana, or if you're in a chair, sitting back in your chair and relaxing, any position is fine. Take a few moments. Be picky as I get out the poem. Find a still point inside of you. Again, you may keep it right where we were, back of the brain. Maybe you want to move it down to the base of the heart. It's a soft focus. Many yogis, as they're sitting meditating, they'll focus kind of where their eyes can see the bridge of their nose. This is where all of our senses come together, right? Vision, smell, taste is kind of at the upper palate. Sometimes they'll even put their tongue up at the upper palate. So there are various ways to stay softly focused, to find that Vishranti at the still point of the turning world. Neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor toward, at the still point, there the dance is. But neither arrest nor movement, and do not call it fixity where past and future are gathered. Neither movement from nor towards, neither ascent nor decline, except for the point, the still point, there would be no dance. And there is only the dance. I can only say, there we have been, but I cannot say where. And I cannot say how long, for that is to place it in time. The inner freedom from the practical desire, the release from action and suffering, release from the inner and outer compulsion, yet surrounded by a grace of sense, a white light, still and moving, Arabung without motion, concentration without elimination, both a new world and the old made explicit, understood, in the completion of its partial ecstasy, the resolution of its partial horror, yet the enchainment of past and future woven in the weakness of the changing body, protects humankind from heaven and damnation, which flesh cannot endure. The still point, yet moving. Please feel free to remain in your meditation for as long as you'd like. I'm going to give you one more quote to drift off with. This is a quote from Plotinus. The nature of God is a circle, of which the circumference is everywhere, and the center is nowhere. May you find your center. Feel yourself present and yet moving through, flowing, eddies of life surrounding you. Thank you for being here with me. Even in distance, we come together.